We were on the seas 11 days going up to Archangel, Russia. And that course we took was up around the north end of Norway and Sweden and down through the White Sea and up the Dwina River to Arkhangelsk.
Well, we got through and made our way up this long, winding sort of river into the pool of Arkhangelsk, which is quite a big area. And again, it was completely deserted. There was no sign of any life anywhere. Everything had just sort of been left, it appeared. Now, we wanted to tie up at the quay opposite Arkhangelsk, a place called Bakaritsa, where the cranes had all the commercial part apparently went on.
It was quite a surprise to see the city of Arkhangelsk with no docks or anything to obstruct the beauty of the city riverfront. The commercial part of the country had to go up the river about 3 miles to a little town called Bakaritsa. And in fact, all the troops were shipped up to, the boats went right up to Bakaritsa for us to disembark.
Arkhangelsk is on the north bank of the river, and Bakaritsa is on the south bank. The river widens out very considerably higher up, and this place, Bakaritsa, might be 2 or 3 miles, at least 2 or 3 miles beyond Arkhangelsk. And there was the port, which was converted into the ordnance depot. We arrived there about the middle of September and were busy for a matter of 6 or 8 weeks, clearing cargo which was being landed from steamers and storing it into the warehouses.
While we were still on the boat, the rumor was we were going to Russia to preserve the rations that were there. Mm-hmm. There were no rations there when we got there. People were very hungry. As a matter of fact, they ate the garbage that we threw off of the boat. Of course, we brought a lot of rations along with us, and then boats kept coming in. They had to get it in there because the place would freeze up solid before winter came, you know.
There was also all our supplies or eatables for practically the whole winter, and they all had to be unloaded and stored in big warehouses, of which there was plenty in the area.
What were your, what did you actually do? Were you like supplies or?
Guard.
You see, we was on guard duty then for a while, before we went to the front lines. Guard duty and...
What were you guarding?
Well, some public places, you know, so on, and supplies. And,
supplies?
Food, flour, muka. God, you could sell that to the, God, every Russian wanted to buy muka. All they were looking for, something to eat. I don't blame them. They didn't have it. If you hadn't had muka like flour and you hadn't had sugar, oh, they mixed all kinds of junk together there they had. And things were running shorter and shorter and shorter. You see, the government had been overcome.
A lot of the women preferring to hunt cases of ammunition weighing 60, 70, 80 pounds rather than move light snow.
In Russia, they practically all women do all the work, you know, boat loading and everything. The men don't work or whatever.
What were your first impressions of the people there?
Well, I'll tell you, the women did most of the work, and the men just walked the streets and argued. The men just walked on the streets and argued, and the women did cutting wood and things like that. And
occasionally you'd see a boat, a rowing boat crossing it with the ladies rowing and the old man sitting in the back.
And the women, I used to be boats on it, you know, and I used to go up and down. And the women always used to row. The men didn't. Women always used to row. And when I was working on houses, it used to be mostly women. They used to have axes and they could very skillful at building. The men didn't seem to count somehow.
So we were always keeping our eye open for a possible landing field, which, as you can imagine, in that country were very few and far between. Consisted 99% of forest and swamp. And I myself was sent off with a sergeant and one man to see if we could find a suitable area to use as an airfield. We found a very useful field at the north end of Bakaritsa, out with the river on one side and a sort of gully on the other. But it was just big enough for our purposes.
You know who made those airfields? The Russian women. The women did the work. They'd pull all the stumps out. They'd get a great big round chain, and a dozen women would get on that chain, and they'd pull them stumps out. And so, and then in a few weeks, they'd make a landing field there for the planes. And so, yeah, I see them do it.
Somebody collected a body of local girls, young women, who presumably were farm hands and the like and used to handling farm tools. They were recruited, and they set to work levelling off the sides, which were fairly rough, so that the road still ran down the middle, but there was a fairly decent area either side, and they widened it out into quite a decent sort of landing field. And as soon as it was ready, we flew in. The machine was fitted, the aircraft was fitted with two Vickers guns firing forward through the propeller, and then I took the aircraft up and proceeded to fire off a few rounds, a few bursts over the river where they do no harm, and promptly shot off one blade of the propeller, which incidentally I made into a walking stick later on. But I came down with the engine vibrating like billy-o to find myself receiving congratulations because I had brought down the first enemy aeroplane. In fact, a Bolshevik plane who'd come up to see what was going on happened to fly near me. I never saw him. I happened to let fly a burst. He got the wind up and promptly landed on the water. It was a seaplane sort of thing. So that was our first capture. Well, the Bolsheviks were retreating south along the railway as far as we were concerned, and our ground forces wanted to know where they'd got to and what lay ahead of them, because the maps were extremely sketchy, simply showed lines, and even those weren't accurate. So we went forward, first of all to try and contact them, and that was usually arranged by the fact that they started shooting at us. Then we knew where they were. We carried bombs and machine gun bullets, armed machine guns, so that we could shoot at anything that we thought fit. And, of course, if necessary, to protect ourselves, which didn't, in fact, happen. But we used anything we'd got on anything we saw which looked a benefit to the enemy. One day, our colonel apparently said that he would get some photographs of a certain object on the breakfast table for the general. Well, this was 8 o'clock at night, they told us this. Anyway, we set off before dawn with no night landing gear at all. We shot off into the dark, organising to get to our target at daybreak, which we did. This was nearly 100 miles away. And we took our photographs and we got back and we handed them in and we had them developed. Unfortunately, the light was so bad that although you could see there were photographs, you couldn't really see much on them. So we carried out our mission, but it was really wasted time. I suppose that happens all along.
Archangel is possibly 6 or more miles up the river Dwina, and the whole of the area around there, I suppose, is really a huge delta, but a passage for ships, a sort of a canal, had been made with sawmills on either bank, and the wharfs were made by offcuts of the timber, that is the outside bark and so on, which was stacked up, making a banking at which a ship could tie up and load the sawn timber, pick tops, or whatever was to be taken. However, this was just a passing interest. We went up to Arkhangelsk, where we saw a British warship anchored. I think it was the Warspite.
Sawmills along the Dwina River.
Uh-huh. A lot of these sawmills. Where was the what did the people do? They were lumberjacks and fur traders and
Yeah, I guess that was mostly making lumber, you know.
uh-huh.
Tamarack trees.
Okay, did you ever encounter any Bolsheviks in Archangel?
You couldn't tell who you was talking to, whether he was a Bolshevik or whether he was a peasant there or what he was. You couldn't really tell.
Did you suspect that maybe the factory workers or some residents in the city might have been Bolsheviks?
They could have been.
You didn't?
Because they all, I guess, left with the Bolsheviks. Most of the factory workers, I think, left with the Bolsheviks.
How about...
But whether they were left on their own or whether they were forced to, I don't know.
In England, see, England controlled that museum, British control all the time, British versions and everything. Everything. What England wanted, as near as we could figure out, not only myself, I was going to say, they had no timberland, whatever. And the pictures that you even, I said, them vlogs to go here, I'll show you. Here they are, I guess. See, England had no timber, whatever, nothing. So that's what they had to go. So they want timber.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And they had a portable sawmills way back then. Portable sawmills.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they were just exporting out lumber all the time?
Well, they were stealing it. What are they doing? Huh. Yeah. And Russian people, they couldn't cut their own timber down. They couldn't cut nothing.
Yeah.
No, nothing. I thought just take it. Just.
But they had quite a time there for a while, because over where I was over there in that outfit, they had a sawmill too, you know, in Bakaritsa, a big sawmill, see, and it's all run by women. And you wondered why. See, and they take the falling out. There were issues and took them off. You know. It was all run by women. So England came out of it all right, because they chipped all the hemp back every time you transport it, go back loaded with something like hemp and stuff, motors and other than like that. They didn't pay anything for them. They got them for nothing. The country was in that shape.
Did you think that England was basically involved in Russia for its own benefit financially?
It got plenty for it. Our equipment cost too many people.
Did you realize that at the time?
I did at the time. After we'd been there about 6-7 months, and we started to realize what's going on here. Because you don't know. Yeah. And I think the Russians realized it too. See, and you see there was nobody to stop them. So they brought us up and they shipped us up there.
How did that affect your attitude toward the British?
Oh, it got kind of rough toward the end, though.